Okay, this is a audio check with the new lens. Okay, so technically this lens isn't new. I bought it last year, actually exactly this time last year, and I just haven't used it yet because I only just became a vlogger in the last week. Howdy YouTube, hope you're doing well. My name is Adam, you're watching Baton Pass, and this is, I guess, part 2 in our Road to Regionals series. So, last week we ran Burning Abyss, and we brought that to locals, and we did okay. We did alright with it. It was a lot of fun to throw it back, but I think now it's time to get a little serious. The deck that we wanted to play last week, Dragon Link, we actually have in our possession now, and we're going to pick up some of the last couple cards we need from the new Albaz structure deck when we go to the store today. This last weekend was YCS Charlotte, and there was a Dragon Link deck that made it to top 32, and it was a very, very clean list. We're talking 15 hand traps in the main deck, 40 cards exactly. It's all just like straight rockets, it's straight, good stuff. Noctovision at 2, Absol at 2, no Chaos Emperor Dragon, no Brotar. Nope, not even Red MD, which kind of surprised me. That is not what we're playing today. We are playing a kind of spicy Dragunity Link version of the deck. It revolves around Remus and some synchro monster whose name I can't pronounce. I'll put it on the screen here. Okay. So get acquainted with that, because that's our boy. That's what we're going to try to summon out today. And maybe we'll learn how to pronounce his name along the way. I'm going to be a little less disciplined with my deck count today. Instead of doing 40 cards exactly, I'm doing 45 with, and let me see, I have 16 hand traps in the main deck, which according to my calculations means I have a 59% chance of opening at least 2 hand traps in my opening hand each game. For reference, the Dragon list that topped the YCS had 15 hand traps in the main, which means they have a 63% chance of opening at least 2 hand traps in their opening hand. So 4% difference at a longer event, like 9-10 rounds at a YCS, I think that'll make a huge difference for our hopefully 4 rounds of locals this week. Last week it was 3. Hopefully it's 4 this week. With a smaller sample size, that variance shouldn't come into play as much. Of the games that I play, I'm going to keep track of how many times I open at least 2 hand traps over on this side, or a brick. That's either Boot Sector Launch, Dragon Ravine, or Side-Frame Driver, which hopefully, because we're running the less disciplined 45 card list, we should see those bricks a little less often. Unfortunately, the downside of running slightly more cards in the main deck is that we're not going to see our power spells as easily. We're not going to see Chaos Space or Quick Launch as much as we would otherwise. The upside to that, though, is that gives us room to run Brotar, gives us room to run Red MD. I'm considering throwing in a second Levinier, just another level 8. So hopefully this means we'll get better mills off the Zombie Vampire, because the Zombie Vampire is really cool. I really like that card, and I'm really excited to play with it. Alright, enough prologue. Let's go to locals. You can't, when you mill off your level 8's Dragon Synchro, you don't get those. They're just going to go right to grave and you just wasted your card. Whereas all of these, you can pick up stuff. Just walk through it a little bit. So say you just made your striker. And now this is going to search this from your deck, right? So do not forget to put it back in there. Because then when you link this off, say you make a credit plant, if you put this on the bottom, now you get it back. Because this way, actually, you can't resummon it, but you set yourself up. Alright, so round 1 is finished, and it was my first time playing Dragon Link in real life, and it was a lot of fun, and kind of overwhelming. Round 1 was against Lyralisk. I went 2-0, and I did a bunch of Dragon plays, and felt really good to mill 5 for the first time in real life, so... but I did open a brick. I opened a Side-Frame Driver my second game, and I didn't draw 2 hand traps in either of my opening hands, so that's 0-1 right now, and we'll check back in after round 2. Alright, round 2 was a slog. I played against John and he had Plunder Patrol, And we played last week, so I kind of have a feel for what the cards do, but no joke, game 1 took like 30 minutes, and it was a feature match, so a little bit more pressure. So I gave him a graveyard full of lights and darks, and he was able to make the light and dark ships and banish my stuff and negate them. I was able to crack his board using Borreload Savage, Hot Red Dragon, Archfiend Abyss, and I was able to make 4 monsters on my turn, and that was pretty good, but then he was able to crack it right back. He forced my Hot Red Archfiend Dragon Abyss's negate, because he activated Rite of Aramesir, and I knew he had Dracoback, the Rideable Dragon. So I knew that he was just going to bounce it back, so I had to negate the Rite of Aramesir. He was playing 2 of each of the Griffin and the Equip spell, which is, he had good reasoning, because he's discarding a bunch of cards, so like, he wants the Dracoback, he wants to use it, but you also got to discard when you got to discard. But yeah, Plunder Patrol, Game 2. Game 2 I also opened both field spells in my opening hand. So we're not doing so hot on the ratios. I haven't yet opened more than 2 hand traps on my opening hand. So, record, 1-1 going into round 3. Round 3 is in the books. This was against Altergeist. I used Zombie Vampire twice in that game. The first time I special summoned his Ghost Ogre. I saw that he was playing Altergeist. I made Levianeer. I shuffled back his Forbidden Droplets from his hand, which was the best card to shuffle back. Because that would have broke my board. The game would have gone on a lot longer, and it was already like 50 minutes long. Just because, like, the thing I'm finding out about Dragon Link is I really have to think ahead, because I could lock myself out of the extra deck pretty quickly, be restricted to darks, or not being able to get access to Link 2s with Quad Boral. Honestly, I normally play kind of janky decks that are kind of linear, so this is a whole new way of playing. It's like brain cells are firing in different ways. Yeah, game 1 I was able to take that, and then game 2, my hand, I opened Boot Sector Launch again, so we're not doing so hot on the hand trap to brick ratio. Like, seriously, I'm running 15 hand traps and 3 bricks and 45 cards, and I've seen more of the bricks than I have double hand traps. It's kind of nuts. But this hand was kind of stacked, and it was perfect because he had a Hextia and Pukari and 2 face-down cards. I sided in Harpy's Feather Duster. And so I use Harpy's Feather Duster. He chains Rivalry of Warlords, trying to get the Multi-Faker off. I use Psyframe Gear Gamma to negate his Multi-Faker, and then I just completely just build from there. So it was like build a board workshop. As soon as I made access code talker, he was like, okay, you got it. I had the luckiest hand. I actually drew a card I sided, which if you've played Yu-Gi-Oh! For a while, you know how rare that is. Alright, so tournament's over, round 4. I got to play against Jerry and his branded deck for the second time in the last couple weeks, but this time it's got the Albaz support, and it's a totally different animal. So I lost 0-2, but it wasn't for lack of trying. Like, I finally opened more than 1 hand trap in a game, and it was Lancia Gamma, and those are the best ones. But I also unfortunately had another another Lancia, and Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, and some other card I couldn't activate. And it's like, the math did not do me well today. But that was a lot of fun, and I was able to make plays, but the Masquerade Dragon just kept burning me. And I was running out of life, so I had to go into battle so I could get over it before I could like finish making my board, like go access code and pop the rest of his cards. But by that point, like, I couldn't attack again, and he had his turn. He still had Dragoon, and I got Yu-Gi-Oh'd, but it is what it is. I learned a lot of cool things about the Dragon Link deck that I will report back to you when I do my deck profile in the morning. Good night for now, and I will see you in the morning. Transition. Hey, how's it going? We are back at my house, and we gotta unpack from that locals experience. So, my first time playing Dragon Link, I ultimately ended up going 2-2, which I think is about average. If you're winning and losing 50% of your games, you're doing okay. Because this game is really reliant on variance, especially at the locals level, because you just don't know what you're gonna see. Playing this deck was a different experience for me because I'm not used to the fishbowl nature of the deck. I am so used to like more linear decks. Like, I started playing with Cosmo a couple years ago, and that's very linear. And Paleo Frog's a little less linear, but still, there's a correct path to get from A to B. That's not the case with this deck. I don't have the a big enough brain to make all these plays, or at least to think, the couple steps ahead that are required of me. Especially for matchups like Plunder Patrol, where like my deck just naturally has a disadvantage against them because I'm loading my graveyard with so many lights and darks. Like their extra deck monsters are really hard to get over because of the monster negate and banish. It is a lot of fun to play. I am really excited to continue to learn the combos. Summoning Magic Ruler Dragon, Pega Ruler, and milling 5 just feels chef's kiss. It is such a good feeling, and it kind of makes me think of a much more stronger and more consistent Burning Abyss with a lot more different monsters. Those are my thoughts on the deck. I made a big deal this week about my hand trap ratio, and I have to say I'm also a little disappointed in that. So I kept the tally of the 8 games that I played. Of the 8 opening hands that I had, there's only one of those that saw at least 2 hand traps in my hand. We want to at least see 2 hand traps in every opening hand, because that way we can like really interact with our opponent on their turn if we lose the die roll. And my ratios failed me. I think 15 hand traps in a 45 card deck, there's a 60% chance to open at least 2 in every hand, and I lost those odds 7 times. And the one time I did get my 2 hand traps, 2 of them were Artifact Lancia, one of them was Gamma. So like, really good combo. I don't like that redundancy. Now guess how many times I drew my bricks. 3 of those 8 times, almost half as many times, and I only have 3 cards that I absolutely do not want to draw. I was able to put up a fight, which is more than I could say for a lot of other decks that I run, so, I guess that's the power curve that I have to get used to. So since this was my first rodeo with Dragon Link, I tried a bunch of different things in the deck, and I don't think all of them worked, and I'm going to go through that with you, and I'll let you know along the way which cards I didn't like. So let's start this profile. Starting off, we have the Rocket cards. The Rocket package that I'm running is 2 Tracer, 1 Synchron, 1 Recharger, 2 Absol and Honorary Rocket Noctovision. This package is really good. I never found I think I saw Tracer every single game, so I don't really need, and that's with this inflated deck, I don't really feel the need to run a 3rd Tracer. And sometimes I feel like I could get away with running just 1 Absol just because, it's a hard once per turn, and this is not the best Seals target. I think in the future I'm going to try running Fallen of Albaz as a Seals target so I can have more counterplay on my opponent's turn. I think that's going to be a little bit more valuable than getting the Tracer for the follow-up. And I might increase Rocket Synchron to 2, just so Tracer has something to search for, because once these 2 are out of the deck, this becomes a dead card. And then you're really relying on Quad Boral to make your plays live. And then Noctovision. I don't think Noctovision takes a lot of explanation. Like, Seyfried Absol searching for Noctovision is such a cracked combo. But yeah, this card protects your plays, lets you draw cards. I really want to run Gozen Match in a future build, so I could actually try to use its effect to protect set cards, but that didn't come up today. But yeah, the Rocket engine performed as it needed to. I think I'd only do minor tweaks along the edges to, just to tune it right. Keeping in theme. So, Rocket cards, that's 8. And then other dragons. I did run the Black Metal Dragon, Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon package. This is good. I have no complaints about this. The only real criticism I have is that this is a normal summon, and there's a lot of competition for good normal summons in this deck. But this is not a bad normal summon at all. It's also not a bad Seals target if you're really looking for a strong follow-up. So, I'm not totally convinced on Black Metal Dragon. I think this is kind of, nice to have it, but if I don't, it's not going to break the deck. I didn't really play with Droll and Lockbird too much today, so that didn't really come up. So I didn't really need this for chain blocking. Okay, so that's the Red Eyes stuff, and then the Chaos Dragons. 2, 2, 1. I'm really looking forward to playing with Chaos Emperor, the Dragon of Armageddon, the Pendulum Monster. I think that's going to be a really cool addition, but these cards are, the bread and butter of the deck. These are the backbones. I am going to play a 3rd Seyfried. I think Seyfried is awesome, especially with Gamma. Levianeer ripping cards out of your opponent's hand is great, and then the Baby Dragons, you can't go wrong with them. Seeing these in your opening hand is actually kind of rough, though, especially if you open Collar Serpent, because unless you can get a hand trap in your graveyard, it's kind of just sitting there. But it's worth the risk. It's such a good combo, and the only downside is that when this is played with Chaos Space, I sometimes forget I have Chaos Space in my graveyard, so I don't think to put the opposite dragon back before I link it off and get that free +1. So I think that will come with experience with the deck. I think there's an argument to be playing a second Levianeer, but I want to get used to just the one first and the Chaos Emperor. So, Chaos package, going to increase the safer count. The last 4 main deck dragons are kind of my tech choices that I wanted to experiment with, so that's why the deck is so bloated, because I wanted to just see how these performed in a locals environment. The first 2 are Dragoonity Remus. I was really inspired by this regional profile where you use Remus to search for Ravine, and then I think somehow you make Halka-Fibrax or Romulus. You summon out the other Remus from your graveyard or deck, and then you make the really big Synchro monster whose name I can't pronounce, Arid Bear. And then you just control the game from there. Not once did that come up today. I don't know if I'm like playing with that combo in mind, and a lot of times by the time I get there, I've already used Rocket Tracer's effect or Synchron's effect, so I'm already locked into Darks, so I can't summon it because it's a wind monster. So I like it in theory. I think in practice this is probably going to get cut just because I'm not at a level where I can play with it yet, or at least can think that far in advance. But yeah, these are really cool cards. I think in a Dragoonity build, like more specific, these would be really cool, especially with the Wind Dragon Ruler. But for me, I think these are on the chopping block. Destrudo, the Lost Dragon's Frisian. We're just calling him Destrudo. It's a win more card in this deck. It's a good body. It's a level 7, so you can use it with a Safer to search for a Noctovision like you would Absorrouter. It's just not as good because Absorrouter will add it to your hand. It's actually kind of hard if you're kind of in late combo and you don't have a level 7 or lower monster to work with, because you have Link monsters and they just don't have levels, so you can't use that with him. And if you're level 8 Synchro monsters, you can't use with him. So again, I don't think I'm thinking far enough in advance to actually make use of this card, but I know it's a good card. I just don't think it's I'm ready for it in this deck. And then Omni Dragon Brotar. Brotar is really cool. I like him a lot, but I think I'm probably going to replace him with Fallen of Albaz, because just like Brotar, Albaz takes discard to get going, but it also is a super poly without the spell speed 4 effect. And I think it's more important to take one of your opponent's monsters and go for Mirror Jade, which is a really good boss monster, despite it not being a dragon, than it is to search for a most likely Levianeer or Chaos Emperor dragon, because Fallen of Albaz will give you plays on your opponent's turn. This kind of does not. But Brotar is really cool. It is a good card. I just don't think it's for me. Okay, we are running hand traps, and a lot of them. Hand traps are as follows. Triple Ghost Ogre. I think this is one of the better hand traps in the format, hitting Fateful Adventurer or Griffin Rider, or any of the bevy of continuous spells and traps in the game. Ghost Ogre puts in work. Followed up by 2 Effect Veiler and 3 Infinite Impermanents. I wanted to test Imperm and Veiler out, and I really like Imperm. This is a really good 6th card, and that's why I played it over Ash Blossom. Because 1, Ash Blossom is a fire monster, so it's not a light, so it doesn't really provide the synergy that the rest of my hand traps do. 2, it's pretty low impact. Even though it hits almost every deck, I wanted cards that would hit harder. I think I'm going to change that logic around, though, because going forward, I do want to hit Branded Fusion and Fusion Destinies with Ash Blossom. But I have a special place in my heart for Infinite Impermanence. Like, it is probably one of the better 6th hand traps. Like, you draw it after your opening turn, because you can still activate it from hand, and I think that utility is hard to beat. It also can't be, used as fodder for Triple Tactics talent, which is always a good thing. I will probably up the Veiler count and reduce Imperm. I think that's probably more correct in this specific build. No real complaints with either of these. This is a more controversial pick, I think. I don't think Nibiru is going to be very good going forward, especially if the branded cards are running around, because they can do a lot of different plays in under 5 summons. That's kind of the big issue with fusion cards, is that they don't need their 5th summon at all. So I think Nibiru is probably going to go into the side. It might even go in at 2. It's hard to say because it is such a high impact card and it does so well against the Prank Kid matchup when it's paired up with almost any other hand trap. But that was not my experience at locals this week. Nibiru never came up for me. I got Nibiru'd once, but I was sitting on Hieratic Seal, so I was able to play around it. Side note, that was my first time actually playing after a Nibiru was dropped on me, and that felt really good. As a former Salamangreat player, you know that Nibiru is just the bane of your deck. So being able to continue your play after Nibiru, just second chef's kiss. It is one of the main selling points of the Dragon Link strategy. Nibiru, probably gonna... Actually, I'll probably replace this with Ash Blossom, because it's more generic against more matchups. 2 Artifact Lancia. I think the third one... No, I didn't have the third one sided, because side deck space is really tight. But Lancia is a turn ender. Especially in the branded matchup, which I'm kind of afraid of just because Super Poly is a thing. But being able to stop their Albion or their branded in red from fusion summoning even further is just such a good play. It being a light monster comes up a lot, and this is a really good zombie vampire target because if you summon it, you could activate it by tributing it off field, just like Ghost Ogre. So yeah, Lancia. I don't know if I'm going to main it. Have to make the decision still because it's not as generic as some of the other choices, but this is definitely going to see play in at least the side deck. And then the most powerful hand trap I think in the game, Side Frame Gear Gamma. So I really love this card. This card single-handedly won me my Altergeist matchup when he multi-vagored me on my turn. So, you know, I don't need to say too much about the power level. I do want to say that I think a lot of players are playing around Gamma. It's a lot easier to play around because, like, as long as I have a monster on the field and it's not Side Frame Lambda, I'm not going to be able to resolve Gamma. That makes it lose some utility, but, you know, if it's turn 0 for me and my opponent's just going off, like, Gamma paired with the Lancia is just, like, the sweetest thing because then your Gammas and Driver don't go away at the end phase, and then you could continue to make plays on your turn. So Gamma is also probably one of those cards that's definitely going to see space in at least the side deck, depending on, you know, how I size up my opponent. But yeah, I'm glad it was main decked today. The only downside is the brick. Drawing into it it's a major feels bad moment, especially when you're running 45 cards. Like, I should not be seeing this. But that's Yu-Gi-Oh! Spells are pretty standard. Triple Chaos Space. Not going to dwell too much on that. Quick Launch. Not going to dwell too much on that. The biggest argument for playing 40 cards exactly is you will see these cards more, and these are the best cards in the deck by far. Yeah, good stuff. The soft bricks, the field spells. You're not as upset if you see Dragon Ravine, just because then you don't have to go into Romulus. So that's always a good thing. Boot Sector Launch, it does kind of sting because normally your combo line involves Striker Dragon, and if you see Boot Sector Launch, then Striker Dragon loses a lot of utility, and you lose a card in your hand effectively. So, but you have to play it. Boot Sector Launch is an awesome card. It really makes me consider playing a Barricade Board Blocker in the extra deck because for longer matches, or if you just want to get this out of your graveyard, it is almost worth considering running a second copy to recycle your Striker Dragons with. But yeah, this is a really good field spell. It's also a total Ghost Ogre bait, but it's worth it. And then the last spell, Called by the Grave. It's kind of like, I kind of see Sci-Frame Gear Gamma as the second, third, and fourth copies of this card. Called by the Grave is awesome. I wish it was back at semi-limited with all these sand traps running around. But it cuts both ways. Love this card. You always feel safe when you see it. Alright, moving on to the extra deck. Again, nothing super spicy here aside for the Dragunity stuff. We have Striker Dragon, Pisty, Hieratic Seal. These... well, Pisty's not that great without Triple Burst Dragon, but I think you needed a Link 1 to send some of your dragons to Graveyard with, especially the Cast Dragons. And Hieratic Seal This card's awesome. I'm really excited to play this with Fallen of Albaz to just make some really big plays on my opponent's turn. It might be super predictable after game 1, but who cares? It's really cool. And then Striker Dragon is just the best card in the deck. I wish it would come off the list, but I think it needs to be at 1. We got other Link 2s. Romulus is good if you remember to put him in your extra deck. Thank you, Gage, for letting me borrow it for the rest of the event. Quad Boral Dragon is awesome. Halqifibrax, I don't necessarily think is essential, but I also don't know how to play with the Dragoonity stuff as well as I should. But, I mean, it's Halqifibrax, it's Needle Fiber. We know that it's a combo enabler. And then Dark the Dark Charmer, it didn't come up at all for me in my games, but Dark is going to be a staple for a long time in this build. And its Witch of the Black Forest effect is also, I think, kind of slept on, because it's going to search for a Levineer when it's destroyed. Bigger Link monsters, Unicorn, Access Code, Boral Sword. Unicorn, I think, is kind of standard. I'm not running IP Masquerena, I need to make space. But I probably should because, I mean, IP and Unicorn, name a better combo. Access Code Talker is what I normally go into for game. And then Boral Sword, I think I'm just kind of running it because it's a dragon and it's of the rocket theme. But I never saw myself making this when I could go for this instead. So, this is good for longer games. This should probably be an Appaloosa, but I think I'm going to replace this with some of the Albaz package. But, yeah, we love these cards. I do want to comment real quick on Access Code Talker. So Access Code Talker is really good, but because most of your other links are darks, it is sometimes hard to find more than one banished target a turn to resolve its effect. So ideally you have Seals in the Graveyard and Romulus. Maybe you have Halqifibrax in this particular build, but I don't think I'm going to keep this going forward. So at most, you're probably on average going to get at least 2 pops per turn, because Seals just lives in the graveyard. But yeah, so that's just a bottleneck worth considering with Access Code Talker. That rings true in this deck a little more than others. The Synchros. These are your normal Synchros. This card is the best card in the deck and the reason to play it in 2022. It sends 5 and it revives itself. Like, this is also your biggest hand target, or hand trap target. Which I think is kind of fine because like it's just free. You're costing them a card, and you know either way he's putting in work. Savage Dragon is really good. Shout out to Mac. Thank you for letting me borrow this. And then Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. I don't have much to say about that. The Spice, Dragoonity Knight, Arid Bear. Oh, I think I found out how to pronounce it. Arid Bear. The H is silent. This card is nuts. It's a Harpy's Feather Duster mixed with Macrocosmos and a Monster Negate. I was just never able to summon it, so I never really got to see its utility. Unfortunately, it is a wind monster, so once you go into your rocket plays, you're locked out of it. But I respect the card. I don't think I'm going to run it in the future. I'm probably going to have this be cut for the Albaz package as well. And then one Zombie Vampire. Oh man, this is such a high risk, high reward card because like milling 9 when you go Chaos Dragon and a Zombie Vampire, like that's more than half your deck is in the graveyard at that point, and so you should be able to just make plays and win the following turn. But on the flip side, milling your opponent's stuff could also be good for them. If you don't hit any like brick or engine requirements like a Destiny Heroes Celestial or a Plasma or whatever. So this is very matchup dependent. It also has a lot of value in being able to see what your opponent is playing if they have a bad hand and they want to scoop. This is just kind of like you know, either let me see what you're playing or scoop now and then take us to game 2 with an advantage. But yeah, Zombie Vampire, this is also kind of a flex spot. Definitely not essential. It is nice being able to recycle your, revive your Chaos Ruler, which would normally banish itself when it leaves the field, but if you use it as XYZ material, you just detach it, and then it just goes to the graveyard again, so you can revive it the next turn. I really like that interaction, but yeah, Zombie Vampire, I'm going to play with this a little bit more, but I don't think it's a 100% must include. Alright, moving on to the side deck now, and this is where I struggle the most. Side decking is not what I'm particularly good at, so you're going to see a lot of kind of generic cards. Harvey's Feather Duster. I top decked this in a Altergeist matchup, and won me the game, paired with Gamma, really good. Triple Cosmic Cyclone, this is for Scythe, and kind of Fluunderies. I really wish I could play Twin Twister instead. I think that's better, but Cosmic Cyclone I think is a format requirement, just because getting Scythe locked is going to end your turn, and then you're probably going to lose. Evenly matched, only 2 because I'm fighting for space. My thought is this is really good against Eldritch and the Fluunder matchup. As if you can't already tell, I'm a little traumatized from my Fluunder matchup from last week. Just not being able to play the game feels bad, man. So evenly matched in theory is for that. Double Token Collector. I should be running 3 of this, but I also figure if I'm milling like 5 to 9 cards off the top of my deck, plus my opening hand, like a third copy of this might not be necessary. As good as it is, like, you know, if you want to see Sword Soul players cry, well, I don't think this card will do it on its own, but this is a really good card. Slightly less good if they're playing Tenyi, which I think most Sword Soul players are now, but still, must have. And then Dark Ruler No More. I made a mistake with this in my Plunder matchup. I was sitting on this card and I was thinking, okay, I'm not going to be able to end the game the following turn, so I need to save this to break a future board. I should have just activated it right there. This would be droplets if I had droplets. The biggest con to Dark Ruler No More is that you can't win the turn you activate it. It's a safety card. Like, you feel really safe when you have it. I appreciate that comfort. That's my first order of Yu-Gi-Oh! Maslow's hierarchy. The last spots of my side deck: triple Super Polymerization, 1 Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. I wanted to be as generic as possible with my fusion target, so I chose this over Dragos Tapalia. The only matchup where that would have come up would be like a Dragon Maid matchup or Plunder Patrol, where they have the Light Ship and the Dark Xyz monster on the field. That's where Dragos Tapalia would shine, but Starving Venom Fusion Dragon just... Honestly, Dragos Tapalia is probably more generic and better, just because all the dark monsters worth worrying about right now are fusions, funnily enough. So there's always a fusion monster on the field, and if there isn't, then I'm not really worried. That's just kind of how the format goes. It's DP, it's Dragoon, it's Mirror Jade. This is also a dragon, so, you know, you can make link plays with this afterwards. Okay, wrapping up. I hope you enjoyed this deck profile. I hope you learned something new today with me, as I did. This is a really fun deck. I think this is a pretty good meta choice if you want to play more games than not. It doesn't have quite the high power level that a lot of like the Brave decks do, but it is insanely consistent. And yeah, being able to run almost 15 hand traps without much consequence, it feels really nice, and it's almost required in this meta. So, with all that said, thank you for watching Baton Pass. I'll see you next week with my next profile. Thanks. Goodbye.